Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Last week we did a thing where we just opened it up for your questions, and let's maybe do that again. So go ahead and unmute yourself or type in, but any question, go ahead and fire away.
And you can unmute yourself. You can type in the question. Go ahead, Linda.
Hey, Linda.
Hey there. Hi.
How are you?
So last week, we talked a little bit about the heart seed. You talked about the heart seed.
Mhm.
And one of the things you said when I went back and re-listened to it that caught my attention was you talked about that we have one birth time, but we have multiple death times.
Yeah, multiple death times.
Can
Yeah.
you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah,
I
like,
didn't understand what that was about.
so the thing with, our birth time is obviously, our time of birth, but the death time can fluctuate depending on our choices and karmas, things of this nature. And so, you know we kind of generate a momentum in our life, and there's like maybe 4 or 5 like particular days that if things go particular well, you might make it to this particular time, or it might be even sooner, depending on what choices or what karmas are in play. And so the death time can actually fluctuate. It may be earlier in life, and then you get past that, and then there's particular times where it would be much later in life. So I mean, it depends from person to person, but there's kind of set days that, like, when you're going to pass. I don't want to say it's predetermined, but like the choices are predetermined. And so, like, if you make it to a certain age, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure when it's going to happen. I mean, you can see a person working towards that day at some point. If, like, say, if the health is declining, but it's usually a very specific time, or a time frame in there. And so, the more good deeds that you do, the more good karma that you generate, the more that it keeps getting put off further and further out. Yeah.
Hmm. Is there any sort of a choice involved? Like I've heard it's put before. Somebody had explained something like this to me about that. Like there are times when it's like our soul is presented with the choice where you could opt to say, "Yep, it's time for me to go," or you could also opt to say, "No, I need to stay and do more." Is
Yeah,
there
I
any
would.
sort of active choice involved?
Yeah, I would say yes and no. I think there are some times where there is no choice. It's just, even if you're like, I don't want to go now, and the time's the time. But if the karma is ripe, then the time usually happens.
Mm.
If you've generated some good karma, even if you don't decree it, part of what happens is it usually goes to a lot of, like, health and health related issues. And so you can extend your time. But there are times where um you might be in the middle of a health crisis, or close to crossing over, and there are times where you do kind of get a choice, like, do you want to go or do you want to stay? It depends on what it is and how badly the body's been compromised and things like that. But it could be a time where, as long as there wasn't a lot of damage to the body, and you just got to kind of come back into your body. It's kind of how, like, when you're in meditation and you're really in deep meditation, and then you kind of hear the voice, come back to your body now, and you're like, I don't want to. Let's stay out here. It's a lot like that. Like, if you don't want to come back, you just stay out there. And then if you do want to come back, you start kind of coming back into your body, a lot like how you would come back in meditation. you know, it's really expanded, and then all of a sudden you can feel yourself being sucked back into the body again. And so, you know, I remember the thing that I would see this the most over the years is with cancer patients. You know, you'd see cancer patients where they'd go, yeah, you probably have like 2 months to live or whatever. And they were like, we'll see about that. And, you know, they really kind of put a good fight. And, you know, they end up living 5 years, 10 years, sometimes even longer. You know, it doesn't happen every time, but, you know, if everything's in the right place and the karma permits, that totally can happen. And then, you know, I've seen patients where you saw this like more in like the older generations, but like maybe a couple decades ago, you know, because like when they would hear the word cancer, there really wasn't treatments, you know, like sometimes people would survive it, but most times, you know, when they were young, people got diagnosed with cancer. It was just done. Like it was, you know, probably a bit of surgery, and then the person just passed. And so they would hear the word cancer and they would just go, okay, this is my time. And so many of them would just kind of go home and lay on the couch. And, you know, I think of this one lady where you know, I was working on her. I said, you know, I see something funny. I think you should go to the doctor. Like, I really think you should go to the doctor. I'm seeing something I'm not comfortable with, and like I think you should get it checked. And it turned out she had a tumor on her gallbladder, and it was slow growing. It was very treatable. It was still cancer, but it was something that was very treatable. And even if it had become terminal, it would have taken years. Like it was caught very early. Like, you know, everything was in her favor. But she heard the word cancer and she goes, well, this is my time. And I was like, I don't think the doctor was saying that. And that's not what I'm saying. Like, I think if you just go through and you do simple treatments and very straightforward, I mean, I think you can maintain quality of life and still get this treated. This is very treatable. And she laid down on her couch and within 2 weeks passed away. And like she just kind of I don't want to say gave up, but she gave in to the it's cancer, this is my death time, and she just, you know, let it fade away. And you know, I don't say that with any judgment. It's just she had almost kind of decided like I'm not going to do this whole dance of chemo and radiation and everything. And she didn't take anything. She didn't accelerate the dying process. She just laid on the couch and stopped getting up and stopped participating in life. She just shut down and she left the body. And I was really shocked by that. I was really shocked by that. Because I mean, even if it had become terminal, it would have taken years. And so but the mind can play a role in that sometimes. And you know, standing back and looking at the death days, you know, that had to be one of her death days that was close, because just giving up, you know, I think a lot of us have done that at some point, and then we kind of pull it back together in a couple of weeks or a month or whatever. And that doesn't happen. But I think she was, excuse me, close to one of her death days. And yeah, it just happened. And so, you know, with Astara, like how we go through, we do our practice and we walk in the white light and we're surrounded by the white light. And and we bless the earth, and you know, the good deeds that we do, and the blessing that we do, and the tithing that we do, all those things, you know, play a role in that. You know, I remember one person, um, uh, you know, this is over in the Philippines, and his body was having a hard time, and he used to have an employee sit in the emergency room in a hospital with a stack of money. You know, over there, if you don't have money for the medical treatments, then you don't get treatment. And so they would just sit in the waiting room and wait for people to come in who needed it, and then they would pay for the medical treatment for people, and then the karma would be decreed. And the story was that that prolonged his life for quite a while.
Hmm.
You know, like every time he'd get close, he'd do that. You know, he'd say, you know, basically he was paying for somebody's life to be saved, and then you know, over a period of time, you know, that did extend his life somewhat.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Fascinating. Thank you.
yeah, you're so welcome.
Go ahead, Mary.
Yes, I'm wondering, is it possible, Reverend Greg, that the First Lady you're talking about, that you were very surprised that she passed on so quickly? I wonder if she would have had a death wish, what we call in psychology a death wish, a desire just to leave.
Yeah, I would say so. Like you know, without going into all the details, like I don't know that she was super happy in her life to begin with. Like, you know, when I
Yeah,
started thinking about it, that's why I was
yeah,
like, no judgment. Like she was having a hard time in other areas of her life. And so when I would sit and think about it, you know, afterwards, because you know, it's just one of those things you do, you like kind of contemplate, like, boy, why did that happen?
yeah,
And when I would contemplate it, I was like, I kind of get it. Like, you know, like it's easy to be the bystander and go, oh, do this and do that or whatever. But she was in the middle of having a hard time. And then that diagnosis, and honestly, like watching her go through that whole diagnosis, it was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And you know, I would say there was a strong thing where she was like, I'm done. I remember her saying, looking me square in the eyes and going, I'm done. And I was like, well, what does that mean? Like, you know, she's telling me what it means. And I'm like, yeah, but like I kept saying to her, like, I know it's scary and it's upsetting and it's frustrating, but you know, this is treatable. And she's just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And
so she knew where she was going.
yeah,
She knew
yeah,
it was her time.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it felt like it seemed like she kind of forced the issue, like that time, like she kind of chose the time, and like you said, like there's a death wish, or she's just like an internal, just like giving up, and you know, she didn't do anything. It's not like she took her life or anything,
No,
but she
no,
was just like, I'm giving up.
yeah,
And you know, that's a thing, like in even in certain spiritual practices, like when like a monk or something gets older, they can do a thing where they can just go, okay, I'm leaving now, and you know, like go off into meditation, and you know, it's a special kind of meditation, but they leave and they just don't come back.
yeah.
And so you know, I found it interesting because it was a little bit like that. Like she just decided she was done, and you know, I've heard stories, and
Do you really think she decided it or she knew it?
yeah, I think she did. She was pretty clear. Like she just kept saying to me in the last time that I saw her, that she said she was done multiple times. Like, I'm
Okay,
just done. I'm done.
yeah,
I'm
okay,
done. And I was
yeah,
like, well, you know, going through a cancer treatment, like people can be all over the like all over the road with something like that. So you know, I wasn't reading a lot into it, just because you know, you see people go through an emotional roller coaster when they go through that. And so I don't want to say it's expected, but like it's understandable. And she was pretty adamant. And then, like I said, I just never saw her again. And so the family had actually contacted me and let me know. And yeah,
But
it definitely struck me as she chose it,
and I'm wondering, there seems to have been some resistance on your part to accept that that was her time. Or that
At
she knew
first,
it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because the thing is, I was doing therapy. I was like, we can do this. Come on, we can make it. Like,
yeah,
you're trying to do the thing where, because like sometimes, especially when somebody's going through something like that, you're kind of like a little bit of a cheerleader too. Like you want to keep them like hopeful and enthusiastic so that they do have the strength to put up the good fight and everything.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And at first I wasn't buying it. I was like, we can, you can do this. Like this is very treatable.
yeah.
And you know, yeah, yeah, yeah. So it was interesting.
Did you, I'm wondering, did you feel when you realized that she really was going to go, that she knew that was her time and she was going to go and she was going to do it no matter how much coaching you tried to give her? Do you feel that maybe you were lacking somewhere along the
No,
line, that you missed a sign or an opportunity, or no?
no.
No, you're very
No,
thorough.
like it was something like that. Like it comes to a choice. And, over the years I've done so much therapy that, watching people through different cycles of life,
Yes.
it I was surprised, and it took me a minute. I had to sit and kind of process it for, a couple of minutes when it first happened. And then I was like, okay, I started factoring in she was in the middle of a really difficult time besides the cancer.
Yes. Yes.
And so like I kind of came to that conclusion, like I get it, like I totally get it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's the same thing in other conditions or when you're helping somebody like who's maybe feeling suicidal, you do the best that you can, but if they're bound and determined, they pull it off.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as and there's no anything you can really kind of do about it. I mean, you help them as much as you can, but then you also have to be able to go, okay, I have to let it go. And we still pray for them after the fact, and we still, do bardos and things for them, but you know, it is what it is. I think the thing for me is um everybody has their life journey. In younger years, I thought, oh, it's got to be a particular way. But as I start getting a little bit older, it's like everybody's got their path and their journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And sometimes our paths cross and sometimes they don't. But when they do, I try to do the best that I can. But sometimes it helps, sometimes it's maybe the not a good time, or not good timing, and sometimes it's magic, where things really turn around. But you do it, you keep trying and always hope for the best. But sometimes I'm not even saying that that wasn't the best for her. That might have been a blessing for her. Like you look at somebody who maybe was close and would have been a really miserable time with the body winding down and everything. Sometimes that's a blessing to go so quickly like that. And so
I would. Yeah.
I just get to the point where I just try not to judge it at all. It's just, it is what it is, and support them the best that I can, and go from there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to know when to let go.
Yeah, 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 totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's probably a little bit harder, as a therapist, it's probably a little bit easier in that realm. It's probably harder with family.
I would imagine so. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would say that's got to be harder. Yeah.
And then also, I don't want to cut you off at all, Mary. I just see Romani, your hand's raised.
Hey, Ramona.
Yes, hello. I'm reading my degrees,
Mhm.
and I'm I'm wondering about the Immaculate Conception. Um the way they I read it, it does make a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And but I also I want to know about the sun seed and the moon seed. Can you explain it a little bit there?
The sun seed, I'll have to brush up on that. Can you tell me a little bit of the sun seed and the moon seed? What degree
Well,
lesson is that in?
in the fifth degree.
Second degree? I'll have to go
No,
brush
no, no,
up on
no, no, in the fifth, five.
fifth degree. Okay.
Yeah. And so you have to brush up on that?
Yeah, like I don't know that one off the top of my head. Sorry.
Okay, because
Yeah.
it explains like when the pituitary gland and what's the other one? I can't remember now.
Usually the pineal. Yeah.
The pineal, yeah,
Yeah.
and they marriage. That's more of when you get Christ within. So,
hmm
but so you cannot explain it to me a little bit?
The seed part, I'd have to brush up on the seed part, but like when you're those two are tied to the channels of the nose, like the each nostril, and so one is expansion and one is condensation, and so the play between the pineal and the pituitary, for one, it gives us our clairvoyance and it helps us to see, but also it's tied to how our energy body works. The pineal gland being the expansive quality, and then the pituitary being the condensation. And so basically the interplay between those two, you're also harnessing divine intelligence or
Oh,
the yeah, the
but
light.
they called it the third ventricle, the third.
Oh, so you're into the vital centers. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so so the third ventricle is tied to like cerebral spinal fluid circulation.
Well, it
Yeah,
would be the third eye, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, the
Okay.
third ventricle is not quite the third eye. Yeah, it's actually there's different aspects in the vital centers that would all contribute to like cultivating a state for your body to have like deeper experiences. Like the more that those vital centers are agitated, it's harder to have those deeper experiences. The more that those centers are regulated and harmonized, the more that you're able to have deeper experiences, activate the heart, activate the crown, and have greater expansion up and out of the body. And
Gotcha.
so yeah, yeah.
All righty. So,
Yeah, the pineal gland would be actually more associated with the third eye, because within the
gotcha.
pineal gland, there's a little tiny energetic seed, the mental atom. And
Okay.
that's where we process information from the higher soul. And that is where light enters the body. And that is actually the inner eye or the third eye.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're so welcome. I'll go back through and I'll brush up on that for next time.
Perfect. Perfect.
Yeah.
Reverend Greg, do you have a favorite mantra?
Do I have a favorite mantra? Usually it's the mantra that I'm chanting at the time, but my favorite mantra. Well, like one that's just a bread and butter mantra is Om Mani Padme Hum. Like that is like
Yeah.
if when in doubt, like that's a super good one.
Yeah.
You know, you can't go wrong with that one. But I do like using the mantra for Tara. Tara, there's 21 aspects of Tara, and Tara is associated with divine feminine. You know, and with Astara and writings of Erlaine Cheney, you know, like Mother Mary was very big in the later years, and the divine feminine aspect. And so when you're chanting the mantra for Tara, you're invoking all the different aspects of divine feminine. And divine feminine is the love aspect, you know, divine love. When you see like the male version of a deity or you know, even in a mantra, something that's a bit more masculine, it's more willful. Like Om Namah Shivaya would be much more of a willful mantra. And so you use that for purification, cleaning things up, like releasing something, disintegrating pride. But like even the thing with Om Mani Padme Hum, you know, it's a wish fulfilling mantra for one. You know, you're invoking the deity associated with hearing and answering prayers. And so when you chant Om Mani Padme Hum, you're invoking the presence and blessings of Kuan Yin, or in the Tibetan tradition, Avalokiteshvara, which is basically Kuan Yin but masculine. And it also helps to do like healing, but it does help to like disintegrate like negativity and help you to release, but in a very soft, gentle, soothing way, where Om Namah Shivaya is like a hatchet, you know, breaking things down, where Om Mani Padme Hum is like water running over something and just keeps breaking it down little by little by little by little. And so, you know, utilizing Om Mani Padme Hum, it invokes peace, it invokes healing, it helps you to access the inner world. It helps you, like if you do it before you go to bed, you'll dream better, you'll go deeper in your dreams, you'll remember your dreams more. And when you wake up, you'll kind of bring the lesson or the information from your dreams forth into your conscious mind. And so, you know, we're getting ready to switch over to the Mystic Vibration class. So how about we do a little mantra in that, and then we'll continue with Q&A like this. So join us over on the Mystic Vibration. We're going to switch over and post the link for you right now. And then we'll do Om Mani Padme Hum, and then we'll do more Q&A.